Hello, everyone. Welcome back to LoFi History, where you get to ask our wonderful historians, Glenn and Marie, your history questions, and I get to be amazed at how much they know. I am Libba. I'm the director of the Cottrell Digital Studio, and of course we have Glenn and Marie here, so we always like to start out with what Glenn and Marie are wearing, but I guess before we get started, if there is anyone who has never joined Lo-Fi History before, I see we've got a lot of regulars here already, then this is your chance to chat your history questions for Glenn and Marie to answer as best as they can. And sometimes we do a little Googling just to figure it out for ourselves, or we save it for a program to do later. But I already see we've got our friends here. We have Josh is here. Hello, Josh. And Richard is here. Hello, Richard. Hi. Karen is here. Hey, Karen. Hello. Wendy is here. Hello, Wendy. And Olivia and Gabby are here. Excellent, excellent. And we also have Barbara and Terry are here. Hello, Barbara and Terry. And hello, and hey, Matt. Matt is here. Excellent. Well, hello, everyone. And do go ahead and throw some questions in the chat for us. We do have one from last week. But before we get started, we'd like to start with what Marie and Glenn are wearing today. And you kind of coordinate despite the vast differences of the era. You got a nice warm color theme. We planned that. Yeah, definitely. Of course you did. Why don't we start with, let's start with Marie today. Marie, you had a beautiful dress on. What era? Tell us about it.
Thank you. So this is a true vintage piece, so I'm wearing a little bit of history today. Nice. So this one is a 1950s dress. It kind of has this fun asymmetrical, which way? I have to do my Weather Channel lady. Which way am I going? It has this fun asymmetrical closure on the top, which I think is just super cool. Nice little collar, little Peter Pan collar. And then, of course, you have to have your hats. In the 50s. 50s, we still had hats. Up until a little bit into the early 60s. Jacqueline Kennedy, she still wore those little pillbox hats, so we had hats. But then hats vanished forever, almost.
Thanks, Kennedys.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Because Kennedy himself did not wear a hat.
So he kind of...
That's that no-account youth they talk about that fought World War II, right? Yeah. That greatest generation. They may have saved the world, but they killed hats.
They did. They did. Ladies held on to hats throughout the early 60s, but then by the late 60s, ladies are not wearing hats anymore. In America, that is. If you go to England, like the aristocracy, they all still wear hats for fun occasions.
Well, they never had a John F. Kennedy president.
No, they did not. They had Elizabeth.
I mean,
for all of it.
Lots of people wear hats to the Derby and horse racing and stuff. But
the Kentucky Derby, everyone still wears hats.
Yeah, that's just a
tradition. And then to some church events, people wear hats, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
really
not true.
Cold.
I was gonna say there's ball caps.
That's true.
Oh yeah, that's
people
true.
Wear I guess that's the American
standard. And I've worn my share of ball caps. Yeah. Everyone has, but
we all have. We've all done it.
They're the T-shirt of the head.
They are.
Right? You put anything on them that you want, and it's a logo or sports ball faces or any of that junk.
We need to wear our history nerd ball caps that we had at the telethon last year. I bet some of our viewers probably have one that they've sported. So. Yes.
Those hats are okay.
Yeah, those hats are fine.
Those logos are perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you also have quite a sporty hat. Tell us about it, Glenn.
Yes, I'm wearing
best hat.
Well, as everyone who watches knows, 18th century is always my fallback. So I just have a very plain felt wool-cocked hat, and the waistcoat and the shirt and the cravat around my neck, and that just completes that look. Nothing too fancy.
Yeah, just what you would wear out and about town in the 1800s, 1700s?
Late 1700s.
Late 1700s. Nice.
Now, wouldn't you normally have a jacket if you were going out about town?
Oh, I suppose, yeah.
Yes, you would, unless if you were a laborer in and around your place of work, you might go in something like this. Now, this is almost undress for a gentleman, but for a common laborer, if they're doing some heavy labor in and about town or something like that, they might take their coat off in hot weather. But that's yes, it's a little, and something I've always wondered too. So here we sit talking about history with our history clothes on.
Yeah.
I wonder if our viewers ever put their history clothes on for LoFi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Richard could because he's a living history interpreter.
Right. Because I don't, maybe I'm going to out myself here. But sometimes when I'm watching like one of my favorite history movies or something, I'll get an associated hat or helmet from the
was encouraged in like early television because people would have their little Mickey Mouse hats. And you're supposed to wear your Mickey Mouse hats when you watch Mickey Mouse Club, or your like little raccoon skin caps when you watch like the Daniel Boone show.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that was a whole marketing ploy.
Oh, that's
true.
fun.
Well, it works on adults too, apparently.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to get like tricorn hats or something.
Or their
That's
history nerd hats.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've got questions already in the chat. We're going to start with one from last time we didn't have time for. This is from David. And David says, my golden years are 1900 to 1940. What age would you like to go to, visit, where, and why? Now, does that sound familiar? Did we answer that question? I feel
we
like
often
actually
answer this
did.
question.
That's true. That's true. Now, how about this? I'll change it up for David because I think we may have answered that. But in your current outfits, where would you go to visit and why?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's like, where would I best fit in?
Yeah. What do you think? And of course, chat, you can let Marie and Glenn know where you think they would best fit in as well. I mean, we've got 1950s and late 1700s.
Late 1700s.
Well, nothing was going on in the late 1700s in the colonies or
just stuff. Just wars and declarations and things
wars.
like that. If I'm going to be a man about town, I'm going to be a fly on the wall and maybe pretend to be someone painting or changing window panes at Independence Hall in Philadelphia while they're writing the Declaration of Independence and debating. Yes, they're pounding on the tables and debating. I'm like, oh, don't mind me. I'm just measuring this window to replace it. What was that you said, Mr. Jefferson? Never mind. I know what you're going to say later.
Yeah.
So that would be me.
Nice. How about you, Marie?
I don't know. I'm trying to think like what was really going on in the late 50s. It was a time of like relative like calm and stability-ish after the World War, but then also not. I could try to go see like a space shuttle launch.
Ooh,
that might be fun.
there you go.
The first.
Well, you're not going to see one until Sputnik, though. That's 57. And then you get nervous about it, and then we send our own stuff into space a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I could try to go watch Sputnik get launched, or I know I'm trying to think like late 50s. Like,
you could go to the like local drugstore for like a milkshake or a soda.
You could go save the clock tower.
The clock tower?
Yes.
In Back to the Future?
Yes.
Oh, I could go watch maybe an Elvis concert.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
I don't think I would quite fit in this outfit.
Yeah.
But I could be like one of those little wallflowers in the back.
You could protest an Elvis Presley concert.
There you go. Now we're talking.
This rock and roll music is corrupting the children.
That would be kind of fun. Right? No, I mean, it's like, I don't really think this, but you kids, you don't know what you're in for.
That's right. Richard says Marie could go shopping at Davison's downtown.
Yes. I feel like I just need my gloves.
Yes, exactly.
You need to go get gloves.
Yes.
Love it.
I could take my children to go ride the Pink Pig down at
Riches. Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
It's chill. It's the holiday time, so it would be. Yeah. I think the Pink Pig would be making her
get
rounds
some food
out
of Howard Johnson's. What other things I've seen in Mad Men?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Okay, let's dive into our first question. So our first question today comes from the wonderful Richard Burke, who is one of our awesome living history interpreters. And Richard says, I was wondering what your opinion is on how MacArthur handled the defense of the Philippines in 1941 to 1942. I am definitely going to need some context on this. Does this have anything to, is this World War II related or something?
This is the beginning of World War II.
Yeah, give us some context, Glenn, and Marie, if you want to butt in, go for it.
All right, full disclosure. I am not a MacArthur fan.
I see.
For the record. So, like so many Pacific commanders, everyone's just sort of lackadaisical about things, which is why Pearl Harbor comes as an absolute surprise. And the next day, they do attack the Philippines, and MacArthur has some of his forces there, but he doesn't use them to the best advantage because he hasn't been preparing for war. He's been hanging out and doing MacArthur things and trying to look cool and important. And so the Japanese, who have a very, very well-trained and at this point well-equipped army, have come in, have invaded the Philippines, and have pushed the American forces down the Bataan Peninsula, and then most of them end up defending an island in Manila Bay called Corregidor, which has some bunkers in it and things like that. They're having to pull everyone. They're pulling Navy personnel, Army Air Force personnel, cooks, giving them rifles, lots of different folks. And so the defenses eventually come to nothing, and they know they're going to have to surrender. So what does MacArthur do? He leaves. He gets on a PT boat and scoots out to a submarine, and they take him and his family back to the States and let the rest of the garrison on Corregidor be captured and then go on the Bataan Death March. Now, some people will defend MacArthur and say, oh, but the president ordered him to get out because his capture would have been too bad for morale in the Americas. Well, there's no way to know that because he sure was willing to get on that boat and take that submarine, wasn't he? Yes, he was, by the way.
Sounds like it, yes.
So, MacArthur in the Philippines, poorly prepared, poor talent, poor execution, but he ran away great. Again, full disclosure, I'm not a MacArthur fan, Richard.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound great.
It doesn't sound like it.
It does not sound great.
If like, is I guess the Philippines part kind of threw me off in a way. Like I said, I'm not a historian, but I don't know much about what's going on in the Philippines.
Oh.
Like, why was that a thing?
Why were we there? So we got the Philippines. Come back with us to 1898 and the American victory in the Spanish-American War, which is when the United States, literally overnight, when Spain surrendered and signed the treaty, became an imperial power. This is when we got Cuba. Cuba, we didn't get Cuba. We sure controlled a lot in Cuba. We got the Philippines, we got Guam, we got Midway Island.
All those territories that you're like, oh, the United States is in charge of those?
Yeah. So especially the Philippines, right? Which was a Spanish colony for a very, very, very long time. And then America gets it, and they also have it be a colony. And in the 1920s, there's the Philippine insurrection, because when America got the Philippines after the Spanish-American War, the Filipinos thought that they were going to be granted independence the way that America had done that with Cuba. Well, no. Long story short, that didn't happen, so there was an insurrection in the Philippines. It was very, I don't want to take this comparison too far. It was very Vietnam-esque. The Marines were sent in. It was very awful inside the jungle warfare, guerrilla tactics, back and forth. It was very brutal, but eventually the insurrection, over the course of several years, was suppressed, and then it became a traditional American colony. That, Libba, is why we were in the Philippines in 1941.
Wow, so it goes way back.
It goes way back.
Yeah.
It goes way back.
Well, cool question, Richard. Thank you. And, of course, anyone else who wants to throw in a question, go right ahead. We do have some questions in the queue. Oh, this is a cool one. So Jack wants to know, who made the first map? That's a pretty cool question. So perhaps we could broaden that a little bit, because I'm sure we don't know exactly who technically made the first map.
Right, we don't technically.
But who were the earliest cartographers? Perhaps, or at least the earliest that you are aware of.
So, I know, well, let me back up. That we know of, the ancient Greeks were the first to make very rudimentary maps, primarily because the Greeks were a seafaring people, right? When you think of the Greek world being Eurocentric very often, we tend to think of the European world as Europe, right? This landmass. The Greek world was actually surrounded the Aegean Sea, right? The sea was what made the Greek world work. And so getting between the Ionian coast and the Greek mainland and all these islands in and around the Aegean meant that they had to know where they were going to go and how long it took to get there, the general directions and things like that. So those were the first maps made for navigation, if that makes sense. And again, we're talking very rudimentary maps.
It's kind of fun to look at old maps, especially like the really, really old ones, because there's kind of just like circles there, and they're just like, this thing is kind of in this place, and this thing is kind of in this place, and then it kind of meets here. But I mean, there's no like compass, there's no like standard, this is a mile or anything like that. It's just, this is generally what we kind of think it looks like.
Now, I do know that the Persians also had representations of distance, because the Persians, in conjunction with the ancient Greeks, of course, the Persians had a huge empire, and they had a main road that ran the entire length of the empire. And so at one point, the Persians go to the Spartans and say, we would like you to join us and come on this journey to fight these other Greeks. And they bring, we don't know how big it is, unfortunately, but it's this big bronze map of the world. Wow. With, of course, the Persian capital at the center of the map. That's an important. And then, so the Spartans, being very Spartan and laconic, were like, how far is it to your place?
What are we talking about?
Well, you can see on the map. Well, how far is it to your place? Oh, you could probably get there in 10 to 12 months of marching. And the Spartans go, no.
Pass.
But so there's an ancient map that is around. Ancient Christian maps. Speaking of the round thing, in Libba, I'm sure you can find one. Jerusalem is always at the center of the map, because it's the center of the world, and then the roundness, then it's very, very vague.
It's vague, and also it tells you more about people's worldview.
Yes, exactly.
Than it does about how to get there.
Right, and I literally just Googled ancient maps just to get a bird's eye view of what they might have looked like, but But yeah.
Oh, so, go to there's one there that says old-vivid maps under the one on the right.
Old-vivid.
No, go.
This one.
Oh, that's the one with the circle that I'm thinking of.
Old/vivid.
Go up. I'm sorry. Go up one. No, go up another one.
This one.
Can you? Yes, that one.
This one.
That one, which is, I guess, for sale somewhere.
Woohoo!
Buy a copy of it on Etsy.
Ooh, that's cool.
But you can see how. I think that one does say that Jerusalem is there at the center, and then there's the Mediterranean Ocean, the big circle around Jerusalem.
Yes.
So it's maps are cool.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that's the map. That's the first map of the North Pole.
That's cool. By Gerardus Mercator. Yeah. So here we have some more ancient maps as well.
Down. Under the I one that you are selected on.
Oh, this one?
Yes, that's the Jerusalem one I'm thinking of.
Yes. Oh, yes. There you go.
That's cool.
And look, there are the continents.
There they are.
They're right there.
Europe and Asia and Africa.
They exist.
By an ocean.
Oh, very cool. That would be a really fun program, because, do we know anything about, how what kind of surveying tools they use? Is it very similar to what later surveyors used?
Maps like we're talking about would only have the physicals. They did not have scales on them, right? There was no scale to these maps pretty much until you get to probably the 16th century, and they're actually trying to go to different continents. Yeah, the age of exploration.
You get some really good detailed maps, because then they actually discover that there's more continents.
Right. But a lot of those maps will have, on the roads between major cities, they'll have the time it takes to get there. Not necessarily in miles, but 12 days on horseback or something like that.
Right.
That's really how those maps operate, is they tell you the distances and how long it takes to get there, because that's really what people needed to know. I don't need to know where Persepolis is in relation to Jerusalem. I just need to know which road to take and how long it'll take me to get there.
Mm-hmm. John in the chat on Facebook says, I'm going to mess this up. Anaximander. So sorry. Here it is. Here's how you say his name. Is credited with being the earliest cartographer that's documented. So, Jack, if you're interested in learning more, this might be a really cool figure to look up. So great question though, and that sounds like a really fun program that we could.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add that to our ideas.
I love
Thank
old
you,
maps.
Jack. I'm gonna put old maps.
I've seriously, we've found some back in the archives, and I've spent an hour just looking at them.
They're
love
really
maps.
Cool. Yes, it's so neat. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, that was
Keep going
great.
on maps.
Thank you so much, Jack. All right, our next question, of course, it's a good old-fashioned what if. Oh, wait, let me put it in front. There we go. That's better. So this is from Josh, who always gives us a what if question, which we love. And today's what if question is, all right, Josh asks, what if Robert Francis Kennedy wasn't assassinated? Would he have won the Democratic nomination and the presidential election in 1968? What do y'all think? I mean, maybe some context. What was his deal?
So it's JFK's brother.
Right.
Bobby is the popular.
Bobby.
Yeah, went by Bobby Kennedy. He was JFK's Attorney General, which is it's one of those interesting things. They were very close. They were very close. And when JFK became president, well, even all the offices he held before, but especially as president, JFK relied a lot on his brother Bobby for advice to bounce ideas off of, and he appointed him Attorney General, which is just supposed to be chief law counsel for the United States. But JFK pulled him into everything, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs, everything. So when I think he was very popular, from a purely political perspective, he had the sympathy vote because his brother had been killed. I think he would have won.
I think he could have done it. Because, I mean, after your brother gets killed and then you're running for the same office that your brother...
With almost all the same ideals.
Exactly. And while some people, of course, did not like JFK when he was elected, it almost became like he became a martyr almost. And then you have kind of that martyr syndrome of everyone thinks that they're great because they died. And he died young and tragically with a young family.
Right.
And, I mean, everyone's heart just kind of broke. Especially when you see his little son salute the casket that goes by. Like, how can you not, have your heart go out to that? So after that, I mean, obviously, I think you have public opinion on your side for the Democratic nomination, and I don't even remember who he was running against.
I don't know. I could look that up really quick.
The one
For
thing,
the nomination.
I'm no expert on Bobby Kennedy. he certainly would have pushed more and further on civil rights issues as JFK had started to do. The only thing that makes me nervous is I don't think he was as big a proponent of the space program as his brother had been.
Interesting.
He was and again, don't quote me on this. I'm going from reading long ago, but I think he was much more of a Mondale type person who thought that our money should be spent on social programs and things like that, rather than on what at the time was a very, very expensive space program with Apollo and all that sort of thing, and even even with LBJ, they had already realized we're going to keep spending money. We're going to get to the moon, go to the moon a few times, but they had already started cutting those budgets back significantly. There were 7 or 8 more moon shots that we were going to do before we even put Space Lab up, and they all got canceled, right?
Yeah.
So budget constraints.
Right.
So yeah, I think we both agree he probably would have been elected president. Civil rights things may have moved a little faster with that, but I mean, that's why it's a what if question.
Right. Yeah.
What if happened?
That's
a good question, because also that's like right during Vietnam escalation.
Right.
Well.
Oh yeah.
So you would have to also think, because his brother kind of got us started in it a little bit.
And then LBJ pushed us right on in.
Yeah, so I wonder if he would have pulled us back a little bit.
Maybe so. I think he probably would have.
Yeah, because I don't think he would have been as strong a proponent of getting in as into the conflict as much.
Right.
He probably would have pulled back instead of pushing even farther.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed another part of the question. I don't know if this is, let's see. Could he also have withdrawn from Vietnam quicker?
Oh, yeah,
Nixon,
yes.
And stopped America's major problems heading into the 70s. That's a good insight. I forgot to mention that part of the question. Sorry, Josh.
Possibly, some of the things in the 70s were going to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
China and OPEC and all that sort of thing. I think it might have been a little more, probably, you know what? Probably would have been better.
Yeah.
I also wonder, because again, he's younger, he's kind of like his brother, and in the 70s, there's so much like culture conflict between like older generation, younger generation. I wonder if they saw a younger person in a place of authority, if there would be so much like stick it to the man.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Like kind of lingo and ideas that led to a lot of just culture conflict.
Well, and not just, and not just stick it to the man, but think about who that generation was, right? JFK and Bobby are the generation that did fight World War II.
Yeah.
They were not the generals. They were the enlisted men and the lieutenants and the captains. They were the young ones who had just fought that war. And then as we go on later, they become, the older vets become president. But that was the thing. He was young at the time because he was of that greatest generation. That's what they were. So they would be bringing a lot different perspectives than those other folks had.
Right. That's a very good question. And let's see. I'm gonna go to. Oh, we got a fair amount of questions. Thank you so much, y'all. And keep them coming because we'll answer them next time as well if we don't get to them today. So
unless Libba makes us do a speed round.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should do quick fire.
Yes. No. History.
Yes. No. I don't know. It's complicated. So Barbara asks, I heard somewhere that in colonial times people ate poultry that was much pinker than the chicken we eat today. Any truth to that?
Pinker as in like not as cooked?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if she means, Barbara, do you mean like, not as well cooked, or do you mean like the meat is literally like different like color? Because like, I don't know, the things we put in chickens these days, I wouldn't be surprised.
If you go back, even like into the 60s, chickens look different.
They're smaller.
They're scrawnier, they're scrawnier, right?
We picked the fattest chickens we could at the Chicken of Tomorrow Festival.
And we bred them like crazy, so now they're roly-poly, can barely walk around on their own two legs.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But back in the day, you may even find a comparison picture.
I'm literally just Googling this, folks, but but this is a comparison by Vox, which I think is fairly, you can probably trust what they're saying. Let's see. So I've got this here.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 1957, 78, to 2005. Wow, that's a big chicken. Yep. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was
people sure
pretty
like
different.
The chickens. Yeah, and I'm sure that the taste was different. And that's the. There are different recipes. I have never tried one of those. There are a lot of excellent recipes from the 18th century.
Oh, and you know what?
Yes.
If you're a member, then you have access to our members-only mini documentary about America's first cookbook, which has a lot of really cool recipes, a lot of butter, a lot of eggs, a lot of butter. So you can check that out if you're a member. But yeah, I'm curious about has chicken just been a pretty popular meat? What's the history behind that?
I'll tell you. I think. Well, I don't think this is what the people who've studied it much more closely than I have told me. The reason chicken is popular is because you take a chicken and that's one meal's worth of meat for a family, right? If you slaughter a pig or a cow or anything like that, it's a couple of days long process. You have to preserve all the meat. It takes a lot of work to get the meat ready to consume it. And it's not always fresh. Maybe that first day or two, but after that, it's all salted. It's all turned into sausage, things like that. If you want fresh meat, Grandma just goes out in the yard and goes, wrings that chicken's neck.
Yeah,
Poof.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, in a couple hours, you've got fresh meat on the table and just enough.
Right.
Not too much, not too little.
That's one of the reasons why chicken wasn't rationed during World War II. And people kept chickens. People still keep chickens. My neighbors, sometimes they get out, and then there's chickens in my parents'
So many
yard.
eggs.
Right?
Yes, and you get a lot of eggs that you use in that cookbook, America's First Cookbook.
That's right.
You get all those eggs. But then you can also use the chicken. So also keeping chickens, you get eggs, you get chicken. Like there's multiple products that you can get without, killing it.
Right, yeah.
So, but that's another reason why chicken's so popular, like today, and I think in some previous, later 1900s, is because so many people were so used to just eating chicken growing up because they had all the chicken recipes. They weren't used to eating beef as much, just because it had been rationed for that period of time. And then once you get used to something, it kind of is hard to get back to doing other stuff.
Right,
so.
yeah. Karen in the chat also asks, didn't we have a episode or a mini doc about war era substitutions? And we did. That's right. Marie led that one about ration recipes.
I tried making applesauce cookies. They did not stick together as well as I thought.
But they were yummy.
And sugarless.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's not as sweet.
Yeah. So we do have a program where you can try out some World War II era ration recipes. That's true. Yeah. Noah says it has become a tradition of mine to cook an old 18th to 19th century recipe each Christmas. So far, I've done roast rabbit and duck and Christmas pudding. Oh, very cool, Noah.
Oh, those puddings. Oh.
Yeah. In that the first American cookbook, there's a lot of great recipes for the holidays. Were you gonna say something, Glenn?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that 18th century puddings are so good. They're not the stuff that comes out of the cup, right?
No.
They're
like bready.
They're bready
right?
and like boiled bread with
It's like chicken pot pie.
Yeah.
But not.
Yeah. We should make one.
Yeah.
I've made one before. Well, I've made a couple, and the last one was in fact edible. Because when you try, as you know, if you tried to make one every holiday, some of the older cooking methods we're not used to, and so you have to kind of play with it. And so boiling these puddings, you have to take the dough, mix up the spices and the berries or whatever you're putting in it, make it into a big ball, and then put it in a cloth, and then take the cloth with a stick and then put it down into a boiling pot, and it has to be there for so long with the water so hot, and it's tricky. But man, if you pull it off, like plum duff,
Here's what Christmas pudding looks like. Yay! Here's a bunch.
But you steam them too. You can steam them.
Yeah.
There's not from a plastic cup.
Nope. And let's see. Oh, cool. We have another question. Richard also mentioned in Britain, corn was rationed, so all the chickens were killed early on. Besides the whole and actual King Arthur of England. Wait, what? I think I'm missing something. Corn was rationed, so all the chickens were killed early on.
Poor Brit. Everything was rationed in the UK because they did not have the agricultural capacity to feed themselves. Because in peacetime, they are a far-flung, worldwide, sun never sets on an empire, and they just bring everything they need. But when there's U-boats prowling the Atlantic, they have to start rationing things. And the history of the UK over the two world wars, or the one big war, depending on which theory you want to have, it's much ration. And Richard probably knows this. There are a lot of rationing. Gasoline rationing and some food rationing didn't end in Great Britain until 1955.
Wow.
10 years after World War II.
Yeah. Dang.
They got hit that hard.
Yeah.
Because America has this post-war prosperity, and everyone's it's the 50s. There's mass consumption of all goods, and Britain is having another. There's not quite a Great Depression kind of feel, but they do not have that yay, we won the war. They have we won the war, and they're we're still dealing with this.
Right.
Because they're no longer a net exporter of capital. They are an importer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's a whole complicated issue.
Yeah.
And also victory gardens, necessary.
Right.
So necessary in England. In America, it was good. It helped.
We got fresh vegetables.
It was more fun, patriotic thing for you to do with your family that was kind of helpful. In England, they were this is a spare piece of land. Plant something on it, or we will starve.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. Let's see. Just an aside. Josh says, before I forget, my birthday is this month, November 12th, and Josh is turning 13. That's awesome!
Wow, yay! Happy birthday!
happy early birthday. That's exciting. Come visit us at the History Center if you want. And Noah also says in regards to Christmas dinner, fingers crossed for goose this year. Ooh. So I would love to know how that goes, Noah.
Yes,
save some for us.
Let us know.
That's one of the more traditional Christmas birds to eat.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Watch for Tiny Tim. He gets excited and then starts coughing.
That's right.
With the Christmas goose.
Terry also mentioned earlier, my family raised chickens in the 60s and 70s. They were 5 pounds live weight. Delicious. It sounds like a big chicken, but I mean, I haven't raised chickens myself. Yeah, right, exactly, right. All right, let's go on to our next question, which is from Matt. I think we may have covered this before. We're both wearing you're both wearing sunglasses. When did stylish shades come around? I think we had when were they invented last time, but when did stylish sunglasses come around? And Marie, I wonder if you have anyone in mind who really made them very chic, as far as sunglasses go. I mean, to me, Coco Chanel comes to mind. I don't know if she was a big sunglasses person. I imagine.
Feel like Twiggy, that model in the 60s, I think she also sometimes wears sunglasses. That's not what she's necessarily known for.
Right.
But I do think I think there's one rather iconic image of her that comes to mind wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, I know we talked about it sort of coming about in the 20s as sort of a bit more part of the fashion, and that there were. I don't think we.
Here's my guess.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to footnote this. World War II. In World War I, aviators wore goggles because the cockpits were open. World War II, the cockpits were closed. They didn't need goggles, but they still needed sun protection, and so they would wear sunglasses. And so sunglasses became this cool thing that pilots wore. And as we all know, pilots, especially if you ask the pilots, are the coolest and most important people in all of the history of the world.
Of course.
And so if you want to be a pilot, you're going to have those shades on, and then you're going to walk around with shades, and that's going to start, so when you start getting into the 50s and the 60s, and the military is issuing sunglasses in World War II for not just aviators, especially for aviators, but for a lot of different people. They get used to wearing them. That's my guess how it came to be a fashionable thing.
I assume it kind of becomes because that would be for men in particular.
Right.
And then ladies generally adapt to more masculine styles or feminize them later.
Right, yeah.
When it comes from the military, at least.
Right.
So I would assume it would be 50s or 60s. Because I was kind of thinking, I don't remember much ladies wearing stylish sunglasses until the 60s. So that would make sense that you have the 50s, which is kind of everyone gets used to them. People then start to stylize them, because I'm thinking there has to be I think cat eye sunglasses, and also just wearing glasses seem to be more popular in the 60s because of those cat eye.
And I think you're right. I mean, what I'm guessing fashion was not a driving force designing even eyeglass frames until the 50s, right? They were always. They had some different shapes and things to them, but they were always very utilitarian until the 50s, and then you start getting all these swoops and decorative elements and horn rims and things like that.
Well, because that's when mass production really took off of a lot of things. Also when we think of plastic, this is plastic. Until then it was all metal and wire rims
and glass.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm seeing two figures pop up in the 50s that really, for women, made sunglasses iconic. It's Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
And here's a cool little timeline I found. I wanted to share. So we do have Emperor in Rome named Nero watched gladiator fights and chariot races in the Colosseum by holding emeralds up to his eyes. So that might be a way to say, okay. And then we also have, this is what we saw last time when we were asked about the history of sunglasses, the tribes, Inuit tribes, using at least, something to block the sun. And then we get, closer to what we would recognize as functional, eyeglasses or medical sunglasses. But this is the first ad that they have in 29. So you're kind of getting into the stylish parts. Here's the aviators we mentioned. And then we really get into fancy, popular, everybody got to have some sunglasses with Audrey Hepburn and Marilyn Monroe. And like you said, into the 50s and 60s is when they seem to have really taken off. And we wear them to this day.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So there you have it. Yep. Very good question, Matt. Thank you so much. And it would be fun to do some programs on specific accessories that have that long of a history, especially sunglasses. Richard mentions that James Dean also likely made them popular for sure. Yeah. Very good question. Let's see. Our next question comes from Wendy. Oh, no, Olivia. So Olivia says, in my Holocaust literature class, we've been watching Defiance, and I was wondering if there were actually towns of Jewish refugees depicted in the movie. Now, I haven't seen this movie. I don't know if you guys have, but...
That's the one... Oh, that's the one that stars the guy who currently plays James Bond. Daniel Craig, that's his name. Daniel Craig. Olivia, is that right? That's the Daniel Craig movie,
that's
right?
Yeah, from 2008.
I think, especially on the Eastern Front, the Soviet-German front, to use the technical term, I do think that could very often happen because when the Jewish community figures out what's starting to happen, they do start banding together to try to prevent the extraction of populations, let's say, to that sort of thing. I don't know how common it was, but for example, in the Warsaw ghetto, the Germans and the Soviets are fighting, and the Soviets have pushed them to Warsaw in Poland. And the Jewish population there that has been pressed into a ghetto, a very small ghetto, realizes, you know what? Now we can fight the Germans. Now we can get these weapons we've been hoarding because the Soviets are literally miles away. And if we can start attacking the Germans within Warsaw, within the city itself, then it'll make them have to surrender quicker and pull out, and then the Soviets will get here. However, never count on the Soviet Union to be a hero. The Soviets get word of what's going on. They don't want to have to deal with this Jewish problem in Warsaw, and so they actually stop and stall their offensive while the Germans put down the uprising in the Warsaw ghetto. So that one does not turn, and you may have studied this, Olivia. If you haven't gotten there yet, it's a very tragic episode in the Second World War. With those, it's within a city. It's a group of Jewish people who are trying to resist the German occupation and the German oppression, and it doesn't go as well as they thought, mostly because the Soviets held back. Now, if I remember it in the movie, they're all basically good Soviet soldiers or ex-Soviet soldiers trying to get to the lines where they can get out and things like that. I haven't watched that movie in a few years though.
Yeah, but these refugee areas did exist.
Yes,
as depicted in the movies. So, great question, Olivia. Let's see. All right, our next question. This is from Gavi. So Olivia and now Gavi. Do you know who the first famous mathematician was, or someone who made good contributions to math? I did do a little Googling. Yes, that certainly came up. As far as the earliest, according to good old Wikipedia, one of the earliest mathematicians was this guy, Thales of Miletus. I'm gonna put it on the screen. How do you
Thales of Miletus.
Yes, that. Yes. So, a Greek mathematician and astronomer, pre-Socratic.
I noticed they keep referring to these people as pre- and post-Socratic.
That's interesting. Yeah. Let's see what did he do though? Theories, geometry.
Oh, the Greeks love their geometry.
Okay, so developed some parts of geometry. He understood triangles. He was all about the triangles, you know.
Really like those angles.
He had some theorems, but some other folks that were mentioned were Hypatia, which I thought was cool because it's a female mathematician who was in Alexandria, Egypt, when it was part of the Roman Empire. Do you know anything about her?
I know that she was. That it's in the later empire. You know, when it had Christianized more or less. So I think that's one reason she was tolerated, quote unquote. And you know, I that's all I really know about her.
Yeah.
Personally, I know that she was. You know, she was an aristocrat, which gave her the leisure time and the ability to focus on studies.
Right.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, in those days, that's what happens.
Yeah. It says that she's the first female mathematician whose life is reasonably well recorded, so that would be a pretty cool program, in my opinion, since there seems to be...
she was murdered.
Oh, ooh, even tantalizing details. All right, well, she seems really cool. There was also mention of... an Indian mathematician, don't know how to say his name, Badhayana, who is credited with the number pi, which is pretty cool. But then we also have Pythagoras.
I love his theorem.
Yeah, I know all about it. No, I don't. I don't know anything about math.
And just for the record, the only reason we answer that is because it's the history of math. You thought you would be sneaky working math into a history program.
Yeah, right, Gabby.
You are very bad at it.
That's right.
At least I am very
man,
bad at it.
You almost had us.
All right, I'm going to put early math.
Do not ask us to explain any of those theorems or how they work.
And Hypatia.
I can do Pythagoras.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, tell us about Pythagoras. What was his deal?
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
That guy. That's right. Good old Pythagoras. All right. Well, thank you, Gabby. That's a cool topic for us to dig into a bit, so I do appreciate it, even if we can't spill the beans on everything. Now, I don't... Who had this question? Oh, was this Karen? Sorry, I only wrote the question down. Well, someone asked about, was Shakespeare the first to tell the story of Romeo and Juliet? Is that theme order... when did people start retelling the story? I mean, my understanding is that, yes, he is the author of Romeo and Juliet.
Libba, you may be the go-to person on this one.
Oh, sure. I mean, something that's always been, that's interesting to me is that you ought to read Romeo and Juliet as a comedy and not a tragedy. Although it can certainly be a moving tragic story. You will notice that there's lots of room for comedic effect, especially in just the absurdity of it all. You know, you're sneaking around, you're having to hide your love. It's families feuding, funny nursemaids trying to tell you what's best to do with your life, and then of course the tragic part. It does seem like, this could have been avoided.
Yes.
Know? It's because...
I'm going to pretend to die. I'm sad that he's died. I'm going to kill myself. I wake up. She's really killed herself. Now I'll kill myself.
Right. I mean...
I can see where if you played that comedically, it would be a laugh riot.
Yeah. There are people who argue that it's a comedy, and it wouldn't be far off from, the things that are at stake in other Shakespearean comedies. But yes, Shakespeare was indeed the first to author. He is the author of that story. Now, when did people start retelling the story? I'm sure. I don't know if there was ever really a lull in the telling of Shakespeare since his time to now. Are y'all aware of any?
That's the interesting thing. There are of course peaks and valleys, but
right.
Since Shakespeare wrote his stuff, someone's been performing it. Either as less popular or as all the rage.
Yeah, so I guess those would be like performances of the same thing, but each director has their own interpretation, so you could count that as a retelling.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have their own spin on it,
even
though they're using the same script.
Right.
So I assume like the second show that was put on by, you know, some other theater troupe that was not Shakespeare's would be considered the first retelling.
Right.
Now, it's interesting to think about, like, how were royalties a thing back? I would assume so, and they want to make money. What else are they, you know? But, like, how was that worked out? Were there sort of, like, copycats, you know, of, like, just taking the story and making it their own? That would be fun to dive into.
There have been a couple. I mean, you know, there's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
That's a good one. What is the other one? Shakespeare in Love, around Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, right.
That's a fun one. And it's so funny.
And then we say, like, Romeo and Juliet love stories are basically anyone who, like, thinks like their group shouldn't be together. You could even call High School Musical a Romeo and Juliet story.
Oh yeah, you totally could.
Star-crossed lovers.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. I mean, he establishes many of the tropes that we use. And that was Gabby. Thank you, Gabby, for that question. I appreciate it. Thank you, Alma. So Gabby from California was asking about Shakespeare, and her current show is West Side Story. So that is yet another perfect example.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes,
story.
That's
a retelling.
That.
It
Absolutely.
is also a very thinly veiled approach to how art museums and history museums treat each other. It's always sharks and jets, man. We don't like each other.
Oh man, we gotta make a skit with the Quinlan or something.
I
know. That'd be so funny. Thank you so much, Gabby. That's a great question, and I've noted Shakespeare topics in general as another thing we should dive into.
Cool.
Very cool, very cool. Now we have time for, I think we'll get to our last two questions. I think so.
Okay,
good. Karen asks, who was the first person to come up with victory gardens for America? How did they spread tips and info to encourage more gardens? Marie, I know you can take this one away. Yeah, like as far as like when did they first occur? What conflict or what brought that about?
So the idea of a victory garden first comes about in primarily England in World War I. Like, they are a huge thing in England in World War I because, again, England needs food badly.
Surrounded by oceans.
They don't.
They gotta bring. Yeah.
Yeah, they gotta bring it in. Either bring it in or it has to be there. And then when you have, German submarines going around U-boats, they're shooting down pretty much anything. So there are accounts of people like going to highway medians and turning them into victory gardens because, goodness gracious, it's a piece of land and it needs to be growing something so we don't starve. So a lot of these are, it was essential, basically, almost for England to have victory gardens. America, we get into World War I late. We also have way more land and farmers than England does. So victory gardens for us in World War I think they were kind of a thing. Like, someone probably casually mentioned them in passing, but it was not as an American institution as it was during World War II, because in World War II, again, it's World War I Part 2.
Right. Yeah.
So all of like the kind of tropes of, this is what we should do to support our boys comes back, because essentially you're doing a lot of the same things. But at this point, America gets into the war much earlier, so you actually have time to like have your victory garden grow. I don't even know if you could have grown a victory garden and had like one harvest for World War I.
Well,
for the amount of time that we were in.
One of the things that the victory garden was handy for, in that you're right, basically the last harvest, is because the United States took it upon itself. I forget the name of the government agency, but it was run by Herbert Hoover, which is where we said, you know what? Belgium is in a bad way. We're going to supply food to Europe, especially Belgium, in 1918-19. And so much of the American harvest went towards that in 1819 that the victory gardens, I mean, we're still, talking minuscule, but it did help with the idea that, well, if we've got, 10 bushels of corn, that's 10 bushels of corn that can go to the Belgians. But yeah, I mean, your point is still very valid that it was minuscule until we get to World War II.
And then in World War II, it is not as like dire of a situation as perhaps like in England for victory gardens, but it is very much a very heavily pushed, this is a patriotic thing you can do, because there are so many people on the home front who want to do patriotic things that growing a victory garden, canning those vegetables, essentially it's a small thing for you to do, but like you have provided for your family, you're not using ration coupons, and it does allow for like those 3 jars of beans to be sent over to the boys overseas.
Right.
So like it does do something.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like a mass production farm, but like when everybody's doing it, there's a fair amount of food that gets freed up.
Right.
So and that's why it became a big thing, is because if you do it for yourself, it's not that big of a deal. But if you pressure all of your neighbors into doing it with
right. Even them, and there's all, and they went all out in World War II. There are hundreds of different kinds of manuals and posters and how-to guides. I've got some that are actually still some of the best how-to-garden guides I've ever seen. Because they're made for people who have never gardened before, right?
Right, yeah.
And the posters that come out of it, the literature that comes out of it, and remember, what was rationed, the food that was rationed in World War II is processed food.
Right.
Meats, sugar, and processed food. In other words, canned vegetables, canned cheese, and things like that, because that's what needs to be created and sent overseas to feed.
But also for the tin and things that would be used in war supplies, because you had tin drives as well.
Oh, yeah.
And newspaper drives and scrap drives of literally everything. And no one went on vacations because gas was rationed, and you didn't want to drive somewhere unnecessarily, so people biked and walked and did so many things for the patriotic cause of just trying to preserve more things to be sent overseas.
And I actually own a victory canner, because it's not just growing the vegetables, you can them yourself, right? In glass mason jars. And this victory canner is so cool, because what is a canner before the war usually made of? Stainless steel or aluminum. This thing is like made of such thick, almost cast iron, so that those more valuable metals could go to the war effort. And you've got this 15-pound canner, right? That just ka-chung locks down, and it weighs a ton. But you know, canning was huge, because I mean,
can all you can.
That's
I love that.
Because that's when you have your victory garden. You're obviously not going to be able to eat 20 bushels of corn or 8,000 tomatoes all at once. You have to can it. And again, glass is not necessarily a war crucial material.
Right.
You can make mason jars all day long, and we're not really going to hurt the war effort. So.
And Karen, you mentioned the same thought that I did. Girl Scouts were also very influential in teaching folks how to make victory gardens. And Karen mentions that that they taught their Girl Scouts how to make victory gardens, which is so cool. I think it's a really cool way to, you're not only teaching them how to grow their own food, but also connecting it to history. That's a really cool activity. Well, that was actually the last question that we had. Thank you so much, y'all. I did want to share some exciting news. You know that we have an annual telethon, a 24-hour telethon, and we are preparing for that. And at this point, yes, you can enter our donation and our raffles as well. So you can submit donations and enter our raffles. I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. So what's really exciting about our third annual 24-hour telethon, especially since some of y'all have been with us since the very beginning of our first telethon. It's going to be on Friday, December 2nd, and we are allowing you to donate early to get extra rewards and to get extra raffle tickets. So if you take a look, I'm just going to go through some of these. But the whole point of our telethon, of course, is to raise donations for the History Center. But this year, we are dedicating our donations from the telethon to supporting Gainesville Reads, which provides one-on-one tutoring for free to Gainesville students in first through fifth grade who struggle with reading. And this is a program that was developed by the History Center. It's our free reading program, so it's a great cause. But let me just go through a few of our raffles. One really exciting one, speaking of art museums, we have the High Museum of Art has donated a 6-month family membership, and you can enter that raffle. And right now, if you enter before December 2nd, you get buy one, get one raffle tickets. So do take advantage of that. Also very excited about this raffle item. We have several items hand sewn by Marie. You will get a vintage style apron, custom embroidered kitchen towels, quilted pot holders, Very fun. And for the kiddos, we also have a really cool historic games and toys bundle with all sorts of fun historic games and toys. Hopscotch, wooden dice, cup and ball game, marbles, all sorts of really fun things. And then we also have some cool tours that we're raffling. So we have an archives tour behind the scenes for up to 10 people here at the History Center. You get to see all the artifacts that are not on display. And then we also have 18th and 19th century daily life programs or a guided tour and a lot more. So there is a lot to enter for our raffle. Go to bit.ly/telethon22. And of course, we hope that you will join us on December 2nd for our 24-hour telethon. During the telethon itself, we're going to be sharing past programs, some of which you may have not seen before if you're not a member. We'll be releasing some of our member programs to the public. We're going to share a lot about Gainesville Reads and take a look at the year at the History Center. It's been a really awesome year for us. And so do go ahead and enter the raffle or make your donation to get those early bird extras. Karen says thank you for all that you do. Barbara says thanks all. Phil says fun show tonight. Haven't tuned in for a while. Thanks. I'm so glad you got to join us, Phil.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone for your questions. The next time, let's see, we may not have a LoFi in December because we're going to be dedicating a lot of our time to the telethon. So we do hope you will join us for the telethon on Friday, December 2nd. And of course, that's going to be going all the way into Saturday, December 3rd. All right, friends. Alma
That's
says,
what 24 hours means.
That's what it means. We learned about mathematicians. We are not mathematicians. Alma also says, thank you, best part of my day. Well, I think we could all say the same. So thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you soon. All right, bye.
Bye.